Growing Up Weird.
Hi, and welcome to Growing Up Weird, the podcast where we explore how the earliest chapters of Western childhoods shape the health stories that we then carry into our adulthoods. I'm Dr. Greg Dickens, scientist and consultant in medical innovation, and I am here with Dr. Gwen Bradbury.
Hello.
Who is a healthcare researcher, author, and your guide through the science, stories, and traditional strategies that connect childhood beginnings to lifelong good health. Each week, we dig into the newest evidence, understand how it links together, and walk through some of the changes that we in the West could make to give kids decades of better health. So, whether you're a parent, a teacher, a healthcare professional, or simply curious about how the body and brain develop over time, you're in the right place. Are you ready? Have you got a cup of tea? Good. We begin, as ever, with the news. Gwen, have you got any news?
I have, Greg.
I've got some news as well. I have a suspicion every week that we are going to have the same piece of news. For those listening, we never check beforehand whether we have the same piece of news or not. Actually, I have two pieces of news. Can I start with my first?
Yes, go for it.
My first is that I have COVID and I feel terrible. I'm sitting a long way away in an isolated area with a microphone and a laptop and not a lot else, and snuffles. So if you hear me going, it's just because I'm ill. They're not sound effects.
But what great context for a whole episode about disgust, Greg.
Oh yeah, because I'm really disgusting
Disgusting.
now. Just awful. So yeah, I apologise for my unusually husky voice today. So that's my first piece of news. Godova, what's your first piece of news?
So my first piece of news came out 3 days ago. It's a paper published in Frontiers of Nutrition by Wortman et al. From Rutgers University. But they were looking at how breast milk changes over the day and what the implications are for feeding pumped breast milk at times other than the time it was pumped.
That's cool. Okay,
Pretty cool, right? So they took 38 lactating mothers and they measured breast milk at 4 different times of the day. They were looking at how things like cortisol, so stress hormones, melatonin, so part of the hormone that regulates our circadian rhythm, and a bunch of other hormones change at those 4 time periods. And they found that cortisol and melatonin vary very significantly, but a few others, so lactoferrin, which is it modulates the microbial load in the milk. Yeah. And IgA, so that's immunoglobulins, they only varied in children who were different ages or different sexes, or if the mother had a higher BMI, which I found quite interesting. But
otherwise stable throughout the day.
But otherwise pretty stable through the day.
That's interesting. So hang on, that was lactoferrin and immunoglobulin A.
Exactly, yeah.
So for anybody who doesn't know what immunoglobulins are, they're antibodies. They are proteins that stick to pathogens and render them either useless or very easy to kill. And I guess that's what, saying that the breast milk doesn't expect, in inverted commas, those to change very quickly?
Presumably. They also looked at the microbiome of the milk, which also varies over a 24-hour cycle.
No way.
Which is pretty cool. So overnight, there is there's an increase in skin-associated bacteria. And during the day, you've got an increase in environmental bacteria, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah,
I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. But one of the things that I found particularly interesting when I was reading this article was I then went back and said, okay, so what happens? I hadn't even thought about how the milk microbiome varies during the day. But this same group published a paper last year where they said that actually it looks like the baby's mouth modifies the milk microbiome.
What?
So if you have, they thought it was the baby's mouth, but if you repeatedly express milk and you're not feeding your baby, you have changes in your milk microbiome over time in a way that is different from mothers that breastfeed. And they've said it was because of the baby, which is entirely, it makes sense.
Sure.
But then we also know, because we've done so much, remember all of the lectures we had on cow milking?
Oh, I do, yes.
We also know that milking machines disrupt the tissue, how the tissue behaves in different ways, because they're not exactly the same as a baby. So I did wonder whether that could be a confounder as well.
Sure. And for any lactating mothers out there who don't want to feel like a bovine, we should say that milking machines and breast pumps actually have a huge amount in common.
Yeah.
The core technology is very similar.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are not in any way implying there's any sort of milk cow thing going on here.
Do you remember that pump that we borrowed for the hospital for the first baby?
I do, yes.
Oh, the big green one.
Yeah, it made the moo sound for you.
It did make the moo sound. I've never felt so much like a production animal when I was on that awful machine. I feel like breast pumps evolved a lot, even in that, like, in those kind of 6 years between our children.
Yeah, it's true. That's really interesting, and it is. I am looking at it from a primatology point of view and an evolutionary science point of view. The advantage is to having some things that change throughout the day and some things that don't. Mm-hmm. You can look at them either as what's the advantage of it being like this, or you can look at it as what is the cost of fixing this. Mm-hmm. Maybe they'd all be better if they varied throughout the day, but changing your rate of production of enormous proteins is really hard. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
And it also made me think a little bit about, how pumping is amazing. It enables, people who don't have good parental leave or who have problems with milk supply, etc. It provides many advantages. So I'm not having a go at pumping here, but I was also thinking about how our youngest daughter was wet nursed by quite a few of our local friends, and actually I was thinking about the difference. I hadn't thought about a difference between wet nursing and having donor milk, as being that if you are taking your baby and your baby's feeding from your friends, then at least the baby is still aligned with their circadian rhythms, which hopefully, and most of my friends are diurnal. I think I don't think they're nocturnal. So I was just kind of comparing those two.
Okay then. Non-evidence supported speculation coming up from me. There you go, signpost. I suspect there might be a marginal benefit here in writing the time that milk was pumped on the bag and then giving it at roughly the same time.
What a great idea. And actually, it's very evidence-based. It's exactly what the researchers suggested. So, well done. Signpost withdrawn. Okay, so that was my stuff. Pumping, breastfeeding, microbiome, hormonal fluctuations. What have you got today?
I've got an interesting one. Normally, I try to share news that has been produced by universities. Mm-hmm. But as somebody who does a little research outside of a university setting, I feel a bit of sympathy for these people who have written this recent paper. Mm-hmm. But it has been peer reviewed and it has been put out through the Journal of, has a really cool title, Human Development and Capabilities.
Oh, great!
Yeah, how far can the human body really go? Anyway, this is part of a series of papers put up by Tara Thiagarajan. Who is with Sapiens, who are a company looking at, they're an advisory think tank type group, recommending governments on policy around modern life. Interesting, right? Anyway, they have partners with and have access to the data from the Global Mind Project, which is a kind of user input questionnaire format. Has about 100,000 people who have gone through quite a rigorous thing to put in healthcare and perceived happiness, etc. data. And they are extracting evidence, learnings from that. Obviously, big flag around user input data. It is very easy to bias what people are writing down from how you write your questions. It is very easy to get people to misremember. It is very easy to get people to exaggerate, all of that. So, question marks around user input data. But 100,000 people does help to smooth that out a little bit. And they looked at they separated the data by continent and then examined it all together as well. And in every single continent, and obviously the global average based on what I just said, the age at which you get access to a smartphone very neatly predicts your adult mental health.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a 40% difference based on smartphone age. Which, given that that's a larger driver than genetics and a larger driver than parental divorce and stuff like that, it's pretty big.
So, okay, let me just make sure I'm understanding here. So, in every culture that they studied,
I'm not going to say
continent,
every
continent study, the earliest
bear in mind
smartphone.
that these are people who are responding to an online survey. So they're probably the westernized parts of all these continents.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
We can't say every culture, but yes, carry on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
But the earlier they got a smartphone, the worse mental health. To be really simplistic, is that what you're saying?
Exactly
interesting.
That. Now, we've known this. This has been in the House of Commons recently. It's been in the American Senate recently. There's a lot on smartphone bans before the age of 14, before the age of 16, whatever. Their survey here included a significant number of people who got smartphones when they were 5 and up. And they assessed them using the Mind Health Quotient. Yeah, there you go, MHQ. Which is a well-validated framework for assessing somebody's mental health, their ability to form relationships, their happiness and efficacy and confidence, anxiety, depression, etc. And you score points. And a good number of points is like 40, 50. Specifically, the MHQ score drops from 30 for those who acquired a smartphone at the age of 13 to just 1 on average for those who acquired a smartphone at age 5. It looks like giving young kids smartphones is very bad for their mental health.
Wow, hang on. So 1 when they're 5 and
13. Oh no, sorry, 30 if they are 13.
And
now,
let me just, are we talking, I'm going to say, are we talking they were like 3 5-year-olds and they all ended up really, really screwed up?
It's a very small cohort.
I can imagine that must be a very small cohort.
Well, they're not small as you might think.
Oh, really?
A lot of small children are given smartphones for entertainment value, which, as a smartphone owner, they are very entertaining.
That is true.
As are 5-year-olds occasionally.
What I find particularly interesting with this is that the fact that it's looking at different continents, and I take your point about the westernizedness of that being a significant bias, but there's a lot of discussion about maybe smartphones themselves are a symptom of a culture that doesn't allow much autonomy, that really restricts children, and so ultimately we've kind of developed smartphones as a way to keep children locked up and away from everything, but that is definitely not true.
Well,
in different continents, or are you going to tell me that?
It might be. So that's exactly the point the authors make.
Okay.
I feel like
that's good. All right. So I didn't need to wave the non-evidence-based speculation flag. All right, great.
Yeah. So the authors make that exact same point. They are not proving correlation. They're not proving causation with this paper. They are just pointing out correlation. Yeah. There is no way of knowing if the people who are exposed to a whole bunch of stuff that are going to cause bad mental health, such as not being allowed outside, turn to smartphones. Or being given a smartphone is a marker that you live in a rich household, which currently is bad for you. Current evidence would suggest that's not true, but whatever. The other thing that they point out in this paper, which I found very interesting, is that they divide the effects of smartphones. So younger age of social media looks like it's the biggest component of the effect of smartphones. So within this part of the stats, they're looking at correlation between overall effect and sub causes. So it looks like the majority of the effect here is younger age of exposure to social media. Okay. But there are also significant pieces around disturbed sleep, cyberbullying.
Interesting. And I can totally imagine that, social media for mental health. I mean, I don't even need to imagine. There's plenty of evidence around the detriments. Did they talk about gaming, or was that actually not really featured in that study? Fascinating.
Not mentioned at all.
Great.
No, it's not talked about at all.
Lovely. Well, I say lovely.
Lovely.
League
of Legends, actually a health thing now. Well, that was excellent. Okay. And as I'm feeling grimy and disgusting, should we talk about grimy and disgusting?
Let's talk about grimy and disgusting.
I read your article, as I often do, because I feel like you'd be annoyed if I didn't. And they're very good, don't get me wrong. Where are we starting with this? What is disgust?
So, disgust is an emotional response of rejection or revulsion to something that could make us sick, or something that we think is offensive or distasteful, like gross, unpleasant. We all know what disgust is, right? We all pull the same face.
Yeah, I just wanted to watch you try and explain it while pulling that face.
No, I can't stop myself.
Your lips are trying to leave your body.
Yeah, disgust.
Okay. And you've got behavioural effects of disgust as well, yes?
Yes.
Which are?
Behavioural effects of disgust are typically around withdrawal. So you move away from something. You try and increase the distance between you and it.
Yep.
As I'm actually leaning back from my microphone, and also, I mean, that is back from you. But you are the opposite side of the room.
Wow. I've never felt less loved.
When I teach vet students, I teach animal behaviour, and I put up a series of 6 pictures of the same dog, and I get them to identify the emotions. And dogs have got a really obvious disgust face,
They
like,
do.
ew, so good.
They do. They try and move as much of their body away from the thing as possible, apart from their teeth.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, fine. So that's what disgust is. We all know it. I just wanted to hear you say it. Obviously, we can say those behaviours are either going to be good for us or bad for us.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk quickly about the ways in which they are good for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Because disgust is a really, really important emotion, and it's conserved across every culture. And actually, the sort of things that make us feel disgusted in different cultures are often very similar. So things like, anything relating to what they call kind of like body products, not even body waste products.
Body products.
What a horrible thing. So yeah, kind of. I don't even need to spell them out, but the obvious ones, plus saliva, mucus, blood, all of those typically have a disgust response.
Interesting, there's one body product that doesn't seem to evoke disgust in anyone. Do you know what it is?
Well, it's clearly not hair or nail clippings, or things are not on my list. No, what is it?
Tears. Very few people are disgusted by tears. And
true.
I've read various pieces on why that might be. Nobody's got a great answer, but it looks like the importance of tears around bonding and group cohesion overweigh the importance of being disgusted by them.
Yeah. I mean, you said tears and my body went, oh. Not a disgust response. Yeah. So cool. Okay. Interesting. Sorry, so things from humans, certain animals, especially animals that are associated with things that cause disease, so fleas, ticks, mosquitoes, cockroaches, flies, spiders, frogs and snakes. So things that can hurt you often have a disgust reaction. Foods that are deemed unsafe, and that can vary in different cultures, so we can talk about what that looks like. Poor hygiene. Injuries and mutilation, so people who are badly visibly hurt make us feel quite disgusted.
It's interesting.
Visible signs of infection and death, so dead things.
Okay. So that's a list of things that it is good to be disgusted by. I'm going to take the leap then and say it's good to be disgusted by those because moving away from them helps you stay safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And when people think about kind of categories that you feel disgust, and they typically talk about 3. So disgust relating to pathogens, things that make you sick. Disgust relating to sex. So this guides how we select partners. So they talk about sexual disgust. And I think we can all think about people who there's nothing necessarily wrong with them, but we absolutely cannot imagine sleeping with them. I mean, there's not that. I know for you, Greg, it's probably not that many people. Oh, no, that's not true.
Wow. Slutty and disgusting. How dare you?
But yes, so certainly men and women have different kind of thresholds for disgust typically around sexual partners, which plays into that game theory thing we've talked about before, where the cost of reproduction falls much more heavily on females than on males.
Battle of the sexes.
The battle of the sexes, exactly. So,
can I pause you for a second?
Yeah.
Just because I don't want to get beyond this without mentioning it, and I have COVID and I'm liable to forget. You mentioned that people who were disfigured by injury were disgusting, and that we lumped them then in with the list of things that it's good to move away from. I would like to point out that in an environment where a lot of people are disfigured by injury and need help, support and compassion, not to be moved away from. This is a hangover from when we were monkeys and does not serve modern purposes. Do you think that's fair?
I think that's absolutely fair. And I think that we'll talk a bit about how our cultural influences modify our sense of disgust. This is just a list of things that are common, that commonly make people feel disgusted across cultures. Not at all a list of things that we should all be disgusted by. Thank you for clarifying. Absolutely, no, thank you for clarifying that.
You did point 1.
Yeah, pathogens.
What's point 2?
Point 2 was sexual disgust.
Oh, yes, sorry, point 3.
And point 3 is moral disgust. And I found that one really interesting, actually, when I was researching this piece, because I kind of hadn't thought about the overlap between the disgust we feel when someone steals, for example, or someone lies, or someone does worse crimes. We feel disgust at their behaviour. But what the function of moral disgust in an evolutionary context seems to be is that we try to avoid social relationships with people who violate social norms, which clearly makes sense. There's a protective component here.
We don't want to be guilty by association.
Guilty by association, yes, but also potentially because people who violate social norms are more likely to behave in ways that can be damaging to us too.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So I think it's not around guilt so much as it is around self-protection.
Yep,
but who
sensible.
knows? Evolution works in mysterious ways.
It does. Yeah. Okay. A list of things it's very sensible to be disgusted by.
Yeah.
I have felt disgusted in the past by a bunch of things that aren't any of those. Or rather, I guess were those, but cranially in the front of my brain, I'm like, nah, this is just cheese. You can eat this. Lots of people eat this. Hundreds of thousands of people reckon that Roquefort is good for you. Why can I not keep it in my mouth? Why do I have to spit it in the sink and go blah?
Yeah.
What's going on there?
Well, I think for you, that one is probably a little bit influenced by the fact that you have repeatedly, as you have lactose intolerance, repeatedly been exposed to cheese and had unpleasant reactions. So
True.
you can learn disgust from association. So,
Okay.
I mean, I'm just trying to think. The recent time I had fish and chips and then I vomited, and I actually haven't been able to eat fish and chips since.
Yep.
And that is, at the moment, I have a strong recent disgust response because of that unpleasant experience. So disgust can be something that you develop at any point in life if you have a particularly unpleasant association.
Yep.
But a lot of our kind of big categories around disgust are strongly programmed when we're children. And that happens not without necessarily an unpleasant personal response.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I can see this is something I've learned. It's not something genetic within me. I guess I could probably deprogram myself.
Well, only if you dealt with the lactose intolerance as well. Maybe that's the point of lactase tablets.
Okay. But if I didn't, there'd be more cheese at Christmas for you.
Well, exactly. So I'm not in any way going to force this on you.
Excellent. Okay. What does this look like in different cultures then? You suggested we were going in that direction. I can see how it looks in this culture. I have seen people pushing cucumber around as if it's a poisonous plant.
Yeah.
I've seen different things in different places. What are the important things about the changes in disgust with culture?
So the reason that it's not entirely genetic and not mostly genetic at all is because you need to be able to take advantage of what your environment provides for you. So you need to be able to calibrate your level of disgust and your kind of disgust stimuli to make sure that you can thrive and survive in whatever environment you live in. So if you live in a place where the sole food source is seal meat and you eat a lot of it raw, you can't afford to be disgusted by raw seal meat, otherwise you're not going to have a meal, right? So you calibrate that in early life, right? This is a food stuff, this is fine. But actually, for people who've grown up where that isn't a common source of food, they can find it very difficult to even put it into their mouths.
Sure, okay. Yeah, that all makes sense to me. But I know you don't write articles unless there is a downside and a risk here, or at least something to be done. So what's to be done?
So the major problem with disgust in our very kind of clean, sanitized, perfect environments is that actually we can end up feeling disgust to very things that pose almost no risk to us. And that can be a problem in a variety of ways. So if you are easily disgusted, you are less likely to be able to eat a diverse range of foods, for example, because a lot of things can trigger your disgust response.
Roquefort.
But it goes further than that. So people with a high likelihood of feeling disgust are more likely to suffer from anxiety disorders, from obsessive compulsive disorder, from negative body image. So we talked about disgust around people, around body shapes.
Hang on. Are those just correlations, or are you suggesting causality here?
So, at the moment, they're just correlation, because no one has done the studies where they are asking parents to deliberately influence those children in different directions. But given that disgust sensitivity is set early in life, and that many of these problems occur later in life, we know that we can modify the earlier ones. So it seems likely that we may be able to modify the later effects as well.
Okay, I see. Interesting. Okay, with all that said, does this allow options or ways to improve childhood to improve adulthood health?
Absolutely. And I think there are the two sides really of setting up a kind of healthy calibrated response to disgust. First is that we want to make sure that we're teaching children to be disgusted by the right things.
Okay, yeah.
And second, we want to teach them. We want to make sure that we're not teaching them to be disgusted by the wrong things.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
That seems complete and exhaustive.
Absolutely. So, what do we want to teach children to be disgusted by? We want them to recognise that foods can make them sick. So being disgusted around raw meat and anything that's touched raw meat, things that are mouldy in ways that are likely to make you sick. So milk that's gone off, meat that's bad, cheese that is mouldy, bread that is mouldy.
Oh, I am allowed to be disgusted by Roquefort, am I?
That's good mould, Greg.
Oh, good mould, of course.
Yeah, good mould. But we talked about how modifying a disgust response may be helpful for protective behaviours, and actually we see this frequently if you look at cigarette packets, which often have disgusting images to try and evoke feelings of disgust and associate those with the product. So we can make sure that we kind of model feelings of disgust around addictive substances and also around human body products. So that's why we always teach children, obviously, to wash their hands after going to the toilet, to wash their hands after they've sneezed, cover their nose and mouth, that kind of thing.
So how we, other than just saying you should be disgusted by this, how are we teaching disgust?
That is recoiling, pulling a face, hand up, the kind of very classic body signalers when a child does the behaviour and doesn't protect you.
Because disgust is contagious.
Because disgust is contagious.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other side of it is making sure that we don't model disgust in situations where children don't need to be disgusted. Spiders, yeah, I know. I knew you would talk about bugs because I think it's so important. How do you teach kids, Greg, not to be disgusted by bugs?
So first off, you're absolutely right. Children mirror, all mammals mirror disgust. At least most mammals mirror disgust. So if you can show interest and curiosity without recoil and shrieking and type faces or noises, it's very hard for disgust to appear out of nothing. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's what I do. I also, for those who don't know, run a bug-related Instagram to show people how beautiful they are, which I hope does a little something to get people past bug disgust.
Great. So, making sure that we don't model disgust around bugs, making sure that we don't model disgust around foods that look different but aren't going to make children sick. So helping children to recognise that food comes in lots of different shapes and some foods can make us sick and we're disgusted by those, but foods that look different we can eat. That's fine.
On this, I have always wondered about theatrical disgust. Mm-hmm. Things like, I don't know, broccoli. Seems to get a rap where it's an in-joke amongst kids media makers, people who do, I don't know, write comic books or do video games or whoever. There seems to be a lot of mock disgust or in-joke disgust.
About vegetables generally.
About vegetables in general. Yeah. I'm really not sure if a 3-year-old can tell what's an in-joke and what's actually real disgust.
No, I think it's so damaging how we glorify certain foods and we play up disgust and we play up kind of dislike, sort of cultural dislike of vegetables.
Yeah.
What do? We're priming these tiny little mimicking primates to buy into what, an adult joke?
Yeah, exactly. They'll be really good at getting the joke, apart from they won't.
Yeah.
Sorry, don't mean to.
No, that's fine. The only last point I wanted to make, I talked about how disgust was associated with negative body image.
Sure.
And, disgust towards people who look different.
And
all of those.
That's not disgust. That is a lower threshold for disgust, right?
Yes, lower threshold for disgust. Yeah. So if you have if you are more likely to feel disgust, you are more likely to have a worse self-image of your own body.
Do you reckon you're more likely to find yourself disgusting? Is it that simple?
I think it is. I think it is.
Sad.
It is really sad. And I think that's one reason that I wanted to very briefly mention how it's really important to make sure that when we're talking to children, or we're pointing out people, or children point out people, or we're kind of, talking about people and we're using their characteristics of their body to suggest certain personality traits, that's really damaging, because it does. If you're teaching children to feel disgust about other people, then when they see, or if they see components of those other people in themselves at some point, so girls going through a stage where they're heavier during puberty, any of those kind of disgust behaviours and that disgust discussion that we've had with them before may really influence how they see themselves.
I've seen that with body hair. I've seen people talking to kids about, really needs to do their bikini line. Ha 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 ha. I'm like, you're priming this kid to hate themselves when they're older. You need to stop that. Yeah. But you can't really say that to people at the beach.
Yeah, that is true. I hadn't even thought about that.
To people at the beach. Okay. So what I've heard so far is that our threshold for disgust it can be varied up or down depending on how we're raised and the environment in which we're raised. If our threshold for disgust is lower, so we're more likely to feel disgust, and we're more likely to suffer various mental health consequences, and I'm assuming here, eat a less well-balanced diet?
Yeah, so I think there are associations with things like eating less well-balanced diet, spending less time outside, especially with disgust around bugs and things like that. So there are various reasons that having a well-calibrated level of disgust helps to support a healthy, active, balanced life. And
the call to action then, the thing that I have heard you suggest about this is that we can help to calibrate kids. No, hang on. I've heard you say two things. One is that level, that calibration is done in early childhood. Got an age range on that?
I haven't, no.
Oh, fair enough. But it is clearly a childhood thing. You see how people are well trained and hard to train out of disgust by the time they are teenagers. I think
I remember seeing that disgust behaviours that start to be established from the age of 4.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so we are dealing with early childhood then. And the other thing that is key here is that we as adults in the community, be we carers, be we designers of children's media, be we doctors or teachers or whatever, we all have a role to play in helping kids set a sensible, local disgust threshold by modelling disgust against things that we should be disgusted by.
Yeah.
And absolutely making darn sure that we don't model disgust around things that kids are going to need as they age, such as a balanced diet and being able to go outside and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Wicked. Well, that's whole and cohesive. Anything else to add?
No, I think I'm done on this topic. The final thing I've got is a reader question.
Question. Let's have it. Wait, you're not asking me. You're asking you.
No, I'm asking. I'm getting you to set me up, Greg. Come on.
Let's hear this reader question and then go in a bit.
Okay, so a reader said, I've read that a baby shouldn't be encouraged to walk too early because of A, the obvious they should learn to crawl properly and longer is better, and B, their hips aren't developed enough to bear their full weight on their legs. I'm not sure what the repercussions supposedly are for bearing their weight too early.
And you're sure you don't ask this one at me? I'm kidding. I am in no fit state to answer that question, but I would love to because I have various things to say about osteoblasts.
Well, tell you what, I mean, you are now completely horizontal. So, tell you what, I'll take the first bit. I've been trying to spare you from doing too much talking today. So I'll take the first bit. I'll hand it to you, and you can make any fun comments.
Tell me more.
So, the reader said mentioned children should learn to crawl properly and longer is better. I totally agree. Crawling is great. Crawling is great for upper body strength. It's great for moving around. I am in favour of children crawling, though not all cultures have children that crawl and they can still manage just fine without that, but crawling is good. But B, the point that the reader pointed out was she'd heard that hips are not developed enough to bear full weight on their legs. Now, there's not a huge amount of evidence on this in the literature, but one recent paper suggested that both early walking and late walking change the hip joint in slightly different ways. So it suggested that the later a child walks, the more likely they are to grow a hip shape that is likely to fracture in old age. So a hip shape that is a kind of the bone between the top of the femur
has a little skinny neck on it.
A little skinny neck, a long skinny neck, and a kind of a weaker joint angle.
For people who learn to walk
later.
I gotcha.
And for children who learn to walk earlier, with less confidence, they thought there might be a hip shape that might increase the risk of hip osteoarthritis. So then I said, okay, this is interesting. Let's look at what the relative incidence of these two diseases are in older age and their consequences. So over a lifetime, around 10% of women over 40 develop hip OA. Around 15% of women over 50 are likely to fracture their hips.
Oh, wow.
Hip fractures...
internationally or just here?
Can't remember. I can't remember exactly
That's
that.
big
That was,
numbers.
I think, UK.
Okay. That makes more
UK
sense.
based, and it's 15% over 50. So obviously, by the time you get up to like 80, a lot of women very sadly die of consequences relating to hip fracture.
It's true.
It's a really bad predictor of mortality. So hip fractures are significantly worse than hip OA, and it's much easier generally to modify lifestyle factors to reduce risk of osteoarthritis than it is to actually change the shape of the hip. So in summary, just from the evidence perspective, I don't think early walking is particularly problematic for leg development, and it may be protective against some of the worst outcomes.
It's interesting. And that's kind of just bone health outcomes, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be other outcomes around spatial awareness development and interaction with the environment, benefits.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What was going to be your point from a kind of fundamental science perspective?
From a fundamental science perspective, I'm sure everybody's heard me babble on about this in the past, but your bones are piezoelectric, right? So if you stress them, the collagen within them generates a charge, and the fact that it's wrapped in a nice insulating layer of bone moves that charge around and concentrates the stress, concentrates the charge, and that then stimulates your bone growth cells, your osteoblasts. In early childhood, that leads them moving out and growing more links through the middle of the bone where normally there's not much stuff. If you really stress out the bone, it grows more kind of bridges and links between the two sides. It is those links that in older age reduce the likelihood of hip breakage as well as the overall shape of the bone. The fact that you've got more arches within the trabecular pattern and the cancellous bone structure there. Google those if you don't know what they are. I would thoroughly recommend getting kids standing on their legs as soon as you can. Not just for medical reasons, it's also hilarious. It is, though. It's adorable. Tiny babies standing up. It's really cute.
The whole portrait mode versus landscape mode again.
Yeah, exactly. Babies aren't meant to be in landscape mode. We leave them lying down and go to them here in the West. Everywhere else we've ever been, babies are born and then all of a sudden they are upright. And they are passed around and they go to people and they hold onto people's fingers and they stand up and bounce gleefully and joyfully, but they are always in portrait mode, not landscape mode. I am intrigued about what that does for the development of gut suspension systems and whether that then has lasting effects on things like IBS and other disorders of gut-brain interaction, which may or may not have something to do with how your body is set up to withstand gravity. More on this in a later podcast.
Well, thank you, Greg. Thanks for your thoughts on that.
That's all right.
I think
Obviously,
before you
I
fall
myself
asleep...
am in landscape mode just at the moment. I've never been more in landscape mode.
I think...
Should we
call it a
I'm
night?
going to bed.
Yeah.
Folks, you have been listening to me, ill Dr. Greg Dickens, and also to...
Me, currently...
Yeah, not yet ill.
Not yet ill, Dr. Gwen Bradbury.
Good night, folks.
Good night.
Week.